Hello, everyone. Welcome to ITS 140. Let's begin. Okay, so as you know, this is a short week because of Thanksgiving holiday, so there's no class on Thursday. Class today, obviously. Today I'm going to do a lecture. We are at the very end of the semester, really, and I'm doing one last topic. I remind you, be working on your own project. So next week, on Thursday next week, you'll work on project. It'll just be an open lab if you have any questions before the presentations the following week. And then on Tuesday, I'll probably do, just one last miscellaneous topics lecture. Today, I'm going to do also a short lecture, and then I'm just going to open it up to questions, given that we don't have a lab component this week, so I'm going to kind of take both days and make them into one. So that's really the plan for this week. Also, during this break, hopefully I'm going to have everything graded. I'm hoping that this break I'll have will give me enough time to finish up. So that's basically the plan. Okay. As you can see, I've updated the materials on Brightspace. You should be seeing Brightspace right now. We've covered a lot this semester, and that's good. Make sure you're practicing these things. The last few topics have been Python dictionaries and object-oriented programming. Make sure you look at those, right? Today, as I said, it'll be a short lecture, and then after that, we're going to do the breakout rooms again. And you're going to show me what you've done in terms of implemented object-oriented into your project, right? So if you remember, we have discussed this. So that's really the plan. Today, we're going to do GUI, right? So I'm going to go over this. GUI is at this point really no longer, I would describe it as much of a programming or algorithms topic. It's just a nice kind of thing to know about. And so I'm gonna show you guys how this works, but it's not really, sort of required as more of a special topics, optional at this point, given that we're close to the end of the semester. But at the same time, I think that you might like knowing that you can actually create programs with like Windows and little things like that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go over the slides. And then we're going to use Python to kind of run this code. This code doesn't run that well on the Jupyter Notebook because Jupyter Notebook is already like a GUI type of a thing. And so instead, we're going to run these just from the terminal. And from the terminal, they actually run a lot better, these windows. So, we're just going to explore them. But as you can see, I'm going to download. So these slides. They're the GUI slides. So I'm going to download these, and we are basically going to use them. Right, so I just need to share the screen. All right, so you should be seeing these slides here that say GUI programming. So GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. And what this is, given that you're writing a project on, developing applications, I thought, honestly, we could cover inheritance, or we are going to cover recursion. I like actually recursion a little bit, but I thought, you might find this interesting and useful, and certainly I wanted to set you on your way. So this is one of the parts of programming in Python where you actually end up using libraries, right? So this is where, if you've noticed towards the end of the semester, I've introduced a few libraries like Pickle, and now we're going to look at another library that has been around for a long time, and it can be used for developing a more graphical user interface. Right? So that's really the idea. You have a more graphical user interface, or GUI. And so we're going to see how that works, and then we're going to put it to practice by just doing a couple of examples, and then from there, I'm sure you guys can experiment with these to try to implement them as best as you can. All right, so let's go ahead and think about this one. So the topics today are basically graphical user interfaces using the tkinter module. Okay. So tkinter is basically the library or the the module that we're going to use that brings in all the code for creating these graphical user interfaces. These things are sometimes called widgets, and they're basically widget just means, I think a widget is an old like industrial engineering term. It just meant a thing. And so widgets are these, these things, right? At least that's the context in which they are used here. They're the things that you insert into your graphical user interface. So we're going to look at displaying text with a label widget, organizing widgets with frames, the button widgets, and info dialog boxes, getting input with the entry widget, using labels as output fields, radio buttons, and check buttons. Now I want to stress, because I know some of you have already taken ITS 110, and that ITS 110 is really a web development class, right? So if you've taken that, you cover HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And you learn through a browser, right? In a browser, you basically create the HTML file that uses CSS, JavaScript, and then the browser, Mozilla, etc., will interpret the contents of that HTML file, and it will display the the buttons, the text boxes, and everything, and have all the web development behavior. This is different in the sense that we're not using a browser here. So I want you to understand that. We're not using a browser. Instead, we're really just from the terminal, from the command prompt in your environment, from the Anaconda prompt, we're going to be running code in the background, right? So graphical code, and just generate the windows like that. So if you've taken any other programming class, C, etc., so that type of thing. So it's not web development. I just want to stress that, even though you might see buttons and radio buttons, and maybe link the two. Okay. All right, so graphical user interfaces. So first of all, a user interface is the part of the computer with which the user interacts, right? So that's where you type things, etc. So mainly this semester, we've looked at command line interface in a way, although Jupyter Notebook is kind of a more graphical one. It is a type still of command line. So it displays a prompt, and the user types a command that is then executed, right? Here, though, instead of, so whenever you were running in the Jupyter Notebook, for instance, you would read in inputs, but you always had to type them, right? You would type them in and then press enter or something, and then you would get the value. Here, it's a little bit different because now we're going to use a graphical user interface, or GUI. So this allows users to interact with a program through graphical elements on the screen. So, you know, that's where you have, as I said, buttons and such things. Okay. And, you know, there's a lot of things that you could use to build your dialogues, your screens, your windows. So I'm not going to cover all of them in the course. I'm really just giving you these slides for you to know where to begin, right? So if you want to incorporate this in your term project to make it more graphical, to have a GUI like this, you know, feel free to do it. You know, it's not required. I'm not going to make it required that you do this, but I just thought, you know, you might actually find it, you know, aesthetically pleasing, so you might want to do it. But I leave that as a choice to you guys, for you guys to make. All right, so a graphical user interfaces. This is the command line interface in your Windows computer, the DOS, right? And so the command prompt, as it's known. Or simply the command line. So we're all familiar with these. You know, if you've ever had an old computer, I'm sure you saw this, and you can still use this on your Windows computer at any time. In fact, you know, terminals in Linux are essential, right? And when you guys take your Linux courses, you will see how important they are. And how they're the future, really. Windows will eventually, I mean, over the years, Windows has just been incorporating more and more of that, and I'm sure they'll continue. So dialog boxes, you know, they're basically small windows that display, and that's the term, right? And when you talk about GUI, you talk about dialog boxes. They're small windows that display information and allow the user to perform actions. So that's why they usually have, you know, buttons, etc., that you can press, right? So that's really the idea. Okay, and so responsible for most of the interaction through GUI. The user interacts with graphical elements such as icons, buttons, sidebars, or sorry, slide bars. Really, a lot of the things that are anything that you can think of that's available really in a website, it makes sense to have it available in, you know, in this environment as well. All right, so, all right. And here, you know, this is an example of a dialog, so we're all familiar with these from Windows, right? These are very common. Okay, so this is kind of the thing that you would want to create. So GUI programs are event-driven. So GUI programs are event-driven, which that's a concept you probably learned when you took your 110 class, or if you haven't taken it. Event-driven just means that whereas a console is sequential, right? You type something and then you have to type the next thing and the next thing, and it's always kind of in a sequence like that. With event-driven things, you know, the program is just sitting there waiting, right? The program is just sitting there waiting, and then you have buttons, and whenever you press any of those buttons, the program is waiting for one of those buttons to be pressed in order to perform a task. So that's why it's called event-driven, because it's waiting for an event to happen. Okay. So in text-based environments, programs determine the order in which things happen. The user can only enter data in the order requested by the program. In a GUI environment, you know, it is event driven. So the user determines the order in which things happen, you know, because there's a form and then there's multiple buttons, right? So you as the user can press any one of these buttons whenever you feel like, and then therefore you're going to trigger that event. Whereas the analogy with a sequential program is that all these buttons sequence, and you cannot press this one without first pressing that one, right? So that's the difference, and that's what event-driven would actually mean. So the user determines the order in which things happen. The user causes events to take place, and the program responds to the events. Okay, so the user causes events to take place, and the user causes events to take place, and the program responds to the events. All right, so now that we've given a little bit of a short introduction on the concept, we are ready to start looking at the code. So basically the module is the tkinter library. So that's the library that you're going to need to explore, okay? All right, so no GUI program features built into Python. So Python is not, a GUI programming language. The tkinter module allows you to create simple GUI programs, okay? So the tkinter module allows you to create simple GUI programs, and it's a library for Python. A widget, as I said, is the term for a graphical element that the user can interact with or view. It's presented by a GUI program. All right, and as you can see here, you can take a second there to look at a lot of the available widgets. Right, so these are the tkinter widgets. So take a look at them. And as I said, I'm not going to cover all of these. I'm sure there's more than these, but if you guys want to implement this in your project, you can research some of these and try to incorporate them in your code. All right, so the ones that we can see here: a button, a canvas is a rectangular area that can be used to display graphics. You have a check button, entry, an area in which the user may type a single line of input. Frame, which is a container that can hold other widgets. Labels, list box, a menu button, radio, and a message. Scale, a widget that allows a user to select a value by moving a slider. Scroll bars, text. Here you can enter multiple lines of text input, and so on, right? So you have all of these available items, or widgets, right? That's a good term for it. And so you can actually try to implement these, right? So that would be, as I said, I'm not making this required, but this would be what you can do for your project. You can just grab this library and try to implement all the different elements. And it should be fun. It should make your program more impressive looking, I would say. So the tkinter module, programs that use tkinter do not always run reliably under the IDLE. Certainly, we've tested this under the Jupyter Notebook, and it is a little buggy. It's a little bit complicated, so it's better to use the command prompt. So for best results, run them from the operating system command prompt, and we will do that. We can just run it from the Anaconda environment. If you just go to Anaconda prompt, we should be able to run it from there. Most programmers take an object-oriented approach when writing GUI programs. So we saw object-oriented programming last week, right? And so you should have a notion of that. You don't really have to take out an object-oriented programming for this, but certainly you could. All right. Certainly, tkinter will be object-oriented itself, as every object will be an, every widget will be an object. So here's some examples of some of the things that you can do with tkinter, right? So we can take a second to look at this slide. All right, and this slide says, display text with label widgets. Okay, so display text with label widgets. So the label widgets, the label widget displays a single line of text in a window. It's made by creating an instance of tkinter, an instance of the tkinter module's label class. So you can see that here. So basically you import the library tkinter, then you do .label. All right, so tkinter.label, and then here you can specify the main window and then specify some text. All right, so the first argument here references the root widget, right, which is the main window, and the second argument shows text that should appear in a label. So let's kind of play with this. Let's play with this a little bit. So this is one of those things that I don't really use that much. But let's go ahead and try it out. So I'm going to bring up the sharing the screen. So I think you should now be able to see the prompt here. So I'm going to say the Anaconda prompt. There it is. I'm going to click on that, and then I should be, yeah, I'm going to go into the desktop. Okay, and I'm going to go into ITS 140. Are you guys seeing my prompt, guys? Guys, are you seeing this, the prompt?
Yes.
All right, so then DIR, you can see there, these are the programs that we've done in the past, okay? And we're in the, so then here, I can bring up Python, for instance. And there you go, that's Python. I'm gonna exit out of there. And then I'm just gonna have a little file in there. Or actually, we can just do it through this. So I'm going to do Python, and then I'm going to say import tkinter. All right, and there's the library has been added now. So then we're just going to, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Keeps doing that. Okay. So tkinter label, all right. So I'm going to do tkinter dot label, right, and then all right. And then according to that, we have to write self.mainWindow. Spell that. Main window, comma, and then a message. Hello world. All right. All right, so that self is probably not required, I think. String object has no, okay. Let's just try this without any. All right, so let's look over here. So that label, give me a sec. Oh, okay. Let's try the following. So from tkinter import all okay, and then master equal tk. Okay, so you can see here, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a window over here. You guys see it? Can you guys see this? Guys?
Yeah, we can see it.
So that's basically the canvas, if you will, right? By creating that master. And then after that, we can try a label. And then we have to kind of tie it to master there, comma. And then we're going to say text equal hello world. That, okay. And then w.pack. And there it is. So you can see now here, if I move this, right, you can see the window there, right? And I grab it. All right, there it is. And so I was able to create now a canvas, and the canvas actually has the little hello world in there as part of the program. Does that make sense, guys? So this is the idea here, is to create you know, your little form for your code. Okay, so we can probably go into 140 here, and I'm just going to create a new text document, actually. I'm going to call it GUI.py. This way I can modify it. So I'm going to open it with WordPad. All right, and now I'm going to basically copy. Or not. Doesn't want to cooperate today. All right, so import. No, sorry, from tkinter. Import all. Right, and then we're going to create master, or any variable name that you want. TK. And then after that, create a label. Call it widget 1. You can say label. Tie it to master, comma. And then as far as the text this time, we're going to say, oops, happy Thanksgiving. Okay. And then after that, w.pack. And we can set you can try lots of things in here, but we can try all right, we can try another one, basically. Let's call it W1, 2. W1 pack, W2.pack, and then main loop. All right, so let's try this code. I'm going to save it. Right, so I can go back to the prompt over here, exit out of this. And now if I do dir, I can see, should be able to see that script GUI. I'm going to run it, Python GUI.py. And there it is. You can see here, well, that's too big, probably. I added both Thanksgivings, and there you have it. Are there any questions? Make sense, guys? All right, so I assume there's no questions. Nobody's saying anything. So that's basically, an example of us running this. So now let's go back to the slides. Let's go back to the slides. All right, so this is where we were. Tkinter label, right? So we added the label, and we've seen the usage of it, basically. Okay. So now some of the things. So label widget displays a single line of text in a window made by creating an instance of tkinter's module label class. And we've seen the format. The first argument references the root widget, which is that canvas, and then the second argument shows text that should appear in label. The display text with label widgets. So the pack method, you saw that being used. So basically, the pack method determines where a widget should be positioned and makes it visible when the main window is displayed. It receives an argument to specify position. Positioning depends on the order in which widgets were added to the main window. Valid arguments include side, top, side, left, side, right. So you can play around with these parameters if you'd like. So for instance, we can try some of these out. Right, so we can go and do side, let's say side right. Do side right. You should be seeing, I'm going to close this. Should be seeing the script. Right, I'm going to do side equal right. Okay, I'm going to save this one. And then now I'm going to run the code over here from the prompt. And you can see now that there it is. There's, probably too big, but you can see the Happy Thanksgiving is over here. And then we kind of move the other one to the right, right? So obviously this takes a lot of, it's a bit of an art. It takes a lot of, just like with when you took 110 or when you take 110, there's a little bit of an artistic side that you need there to kind of know how to place things. But at least now you know the functionality of some of these commands. Okay. So let's go back to the slides. Okay, so we've seen the some of the arguments, and I suggest play with the other ones, right? That's the best way to learn this out. Learn this is to try it out. Okay, and you can see here the display text with label widgets, so you get something, hello world, right? And then, or you can do two as I did, or side by side, etc. Okay. Organizing widgets with frames, so that's something else that you could do. So you might want to have frames in there, and the frames contain other widgets. So the frame widget, it's a container basically that holds other widgets. It's useful for organizing and arranging groups of widgets in a window. The contained widgets are added to the frame widget which contains them. So basically the idea would be that label now would not be in the main window, but instead it would be in another widget called frame. All right, so that's the idea. Okay. So basically you can see here, if you set up two frames, the top frame and the bottom frame, then you can have 3 labels in one frame and 3 other labels in the other frame. And so you can start to use these constructs to start building your menu. Okay, so that's basically pretty straightforward, I think, on how that should work. Now buttons are always fun. Right, buttons are certainly something that you would expect in any window, because you want to be able to click on a button and then have something happen, trigger an event, right? So that's really the idea. So the button widget, it's a widget that the user can click to cause an action to take place. So when creating a button, you can specify text to appear on the face of the button, a callback function to something else, to a more complex function, etc. Callback function is a function or method that executes when the user clicks on the button. So imagine here you define a function, a modular function, and then now whenever you press on the button, the button calls that function. And it's as you probably learn in 110, or you will learn in your other courses, mainly for web development, these are called event handlers, these functions that are triggered by taking an action such as pressing a button. So button widgets and info dialog boxes. All right, so here's other examples. So the info dialog box, a dialog box that shows information to the user. So the format for creating an info dialog box is, you go to, you call the tkinter message box module, and then, you're going to do message box.showInfo, and then you show something like a title and a message as well. Okay. The title is displayed in the dialog box's title bar, and the message is an information string displayed in the main part of the dialog. So this could be, you're providing a message to your users, etc. About something that happened. Right. So let's try this one. All right. So I'm going to go. Let's see if I can just copy this. All right, so let's go down here to the code. Oops, it's still running. Close that. I'm going to do a message box here. Right, and then I'm going to say information. And then, we are closed today. Something like that. Yeah, some message. Okay, so the idea would be to try something like this. So save it. All right, and it doesn't like that message box written like that. Oh, show info, right? I forgot to show. All right, maybe capitalized. All right, hold on. So I'm doing the exact same thing here. That's exactly what I'm doing, so I'm not sure why it's giving me an error. Message box.showInfo. That should be correct. Okay. Let's see, what does the error say? It says name message box is not defined. All right, so I'm not sure what this looks to be right. I don't know. I don't see the error, honestly. Let's try this. All right, and then all right, I'm gonna give this one last try. Not sure why it's not cooperating here. Nope. All right, not sure. All right, so I'll come back to that if I can figure it out. And so let's see if the code will still run. Doesn't like this library. All right, so okay, so we're back to where we were. All right, we have our form there. Okay, so let's look at another one. Let's see if other ones work better than that message box. All right, so maybe you guys can figure it out. So look into. I'm sure there's something that I'm missing. I just can't see what it is, but I'm sure it works. It's just some little thing. All right, that's what we should have gotten. So we should have gotten a little message box there. So now let's look at the window, a window with a button, for instance. So let's try that. Go back over here. We're going to say button 1 equal button. And then we're going to place it at the top. And the button should say text press me, right? So that's the button. Let's see what happens here. And then we need to pack it. So we're going to say b1.pack. All right, so let's try this. Okay. All right, there we go. So here is the button, and as you can see, there it is. So there's the button. And it's something that you can actually press, but it's currently not doing anything, right? So if you guys can see this, oh wait, are you guys seeing this? You're not, right? Can you guys see me pressing the button?
We can now, yeah.
Guys? So I assume you're seeing the screen. And then here you can see the menu. And then there's the button there. Okay. So I assume you're seeing that. Okay, so now I'm pressing the button, but I'm not really doing anything with it. So I want to do something, right? I want to do something. So what I can do is I can maybe try to define a function in the code itself. So I'm going to close this, go back to the editor here. And then now I'm going to define a function. So I'm going to define a function. And so for instance, I'm going to do define function do something, right? And then here I can try now 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can say what can we do? Let's try just printing something out to the console, for instance. I did something, right? So then basically the idea would be that the button would need to have an action to take. So command equal, and then you call the function do something. Right, so that's the idea. Right, so that's the idea there. So when you press now, hopefully it would go here and do something. So let's see let's try it. So again, I believe you're seeing all of this. There's the terminal. So I'm gonna run it. There's the form over here. The widget canvas. Make it a little bit bigger. If I click on press me now, and there it is. So if you notice, I clicked on press me and I did something. Click it again, and guess what? I did something else. And you can see how I'm pressing the button and I'm printing out something in the code. So sometimes you may not need to see something happen, but you're doing something in the background of the code. Okay? Are there any questions so far? No questions? All right. All right, so we did that. I still don't understand why message box didn't work. History. Message box, show info. Yeah, that should be. I just don't get it. All right, so anyway. Message box. Message box. I'm gonna try it one last time. Yeah, it doesn't like it. I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna comment it out again. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. All right. So here we looked at the button now. Now you can also have creating a quit button. So basically a quit button closes the program when the user clicks it. To create a quit button, in Python, you create the button widget, which we already know how to do. You set the root widgets destroy method as the callback function. Okay. When the user clicks the button, the destroy method is called and the program ends. Okay. So unfortunately, it doesn't provide an example of that. Let's see. So destroy. Okay. So let's try the following. So let's go back to the code. You should share my screen. So here, instead of do something now, we could say the command will be root, which is, whatever the root is of this, which of the button, it would be the main, and then try destroy. All right, so if we do that, hopefully it'll end the program. Let's try it. Yes. All right. Doesn't know root. Okay, so I wonder if it's just master instead of, let's try master. Okay, try that. All right, so it seems to have liked that. All right, so now if this works when I click press me, let's see what happens. All right, it did work. So when I click press me, it went away, right? So you can see that again. I'm gonna run the code. So now you have a really nice handy close button. All right, so you have a close button. Oops. You have a close button for your program. right? And so you can, click on press me and boom, closes the window and that's it. So that's pretty handy. All right, so let's go back to the slides then. So you should be seeing the slides now. So the quit button closes the program when the user clicks it. To create a quit button in Python, we've seen create the button, set the roots widget to destroy method, and as the callback function. And then we just saw how that works. All right, another thing you might want to do is get input from the user with the entry widget. So the entry widget, it's a rectangular area that the user can type text into. It's used to gather input in a GUI program, typically followed by a button for submitting the data. So here, the important thing is that the button's callback function retrieves the data from the entry widgets and processes it. Entry widgets get method is used to retrieve the data from an entry widget, and it returns a string. So based on this description, given that they don't provide an example, let's see if we can't figure it out. So basically the keyword is entry and get. So we can go back, let me share again. All right, you should be seeing this. All right, so now let's go back here. We're going to have an entry text box. Probably takes a message, enter data here. And then now the function, instead of destroy, I'm just going to make it do something again. Okay, so let's just leave it like that for now. So let's try this just like that. So I'm gonna hit save. Okay, I'm gonna hit okay. What's the error now? All right, so okay, so it has maybe no string here. All right. Let's probably do E1 and then E1.pack. All right, so let's try that. Okay, good. Here we go. So at least it's starting to become more intuitive. And you can see there, this is where you type things, right? Can you guys see that? So now I'm typing whatever I want. The key is when you press this button, currently it's just tied to do something, so I did something. But what you want is you want to retrieve some information from here, right? So let's say Indiana, right? And you want to press that and then retrieve the data. So now we have to figure out how to get the data. All right, so we've got the information there. All right, so for instance, I'm gonna close this one. We can try, in this I did something. I'm also going to do I'm gonna create a new function actually. So I'm gonna do e entry. I'm gonna tie it to master. And then after that, I'm gonna create a new function called define get entry. Can you guys see this? I think you're seeing me type. So get entry. And then one, two, three, four. And then we're just going to say print E1 E1 dot get. So hopefully that will give us the parameter that we are looking for. All right, so then all we would have to do in theory is maybe change this to enter data, record data, and then here we're going to say get entry. All right, let's try that. Save it. All right, that worked. That's good. Good sign. Okay. So you should be seeing the dialog now. So I'm going to type, I'm going to print it out to the terminal, but I'm going to type here Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. Record data. And there it is. See? Tuesday. So what I recorded in the dialog here in the entry widget, I now have in my program, and I can use it to build something else. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so no questions it seems. So let's go back to the slides. All right, so we're back in the slides here. So we talked about the entry widget. We've already seen how it works. It's a rectangular area that users can type text into. It's used to gather input in a GUI program. Typically followed by a button, which we've already used for submitting the data. And then the button's callback function, I've shown that retrieves the data from the entry widget and processes it. which we've shown. Entry widgets have a get method. We've also looked at that, which is used to retrieve the data from an entry widget, and it returns a string, which we printed out to the terminal. Okay. And you can see that there. The user enters 1,000 into the entry widget and clicks the convert button. So you can see you can have even more buttons. And as I said, you know, I leave that to you guys to do. And you can show whatever you'd like during the presentations the week before finals. All right. Using labels as output fields, so you can also use labels as output fields instead of displaying the data into the terminal. So you can use label widgets to dynamically display output so that you can use to replace info in the dialog box. So basically you can create an empty label widget in the main window and write code that displays desired data in the label when a button is clicked. Right, and that makes sense. So that would be just the next step from what we just did is how to display the data on a label. There's also within tkinter, there's apparently this string var class, and this tkinter module class that can be used along with label widget to display data. So you can create string var objects and then create a label widget and associate it with the string var object. Basically, subsequently, any value stored in string var object will automatically be displayed in the label widget. Okay. So this is an example of how you can show the result there as a label, basically. So you can show it as a label. All right, so let's try that. Let's go back to the code. Oops. All right, so let's go back to the code and demo that part. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the code. You should be seeing me typing the code now. All right, and what we need is we need to assign this to a label. So for instance, assign something to W1. Okay. So we need to see how to do that. Okay. So let's say in here and get entry, let's see, oops. Yeah. So here in get entry, let's try W1. All right, so let's say if I did, instead of this, I created a variable here, label text, and I'm going to initialize it to just hello or test. One. So now in here, in W1, I'm just going to say label text. Okay, so that should change it to test1. So that's the first thing. I'm going to comment that out for now. So let's see. Yes. Run it. All right, test1. So there's the data. I'm actually going to get rid of this right. So now the trick, what I want to do is I want to change the label text. Run it. All right, so test1, that's what it says. So I'm going to add, let's say just some word, blue, record data. So it's appearing down here, but I want to change. So let's see if it's as easy as just changing label text. Okay. Let's do label text. And I'm going to change label text now to e1.get. So that's the value. That variable is linked to this one. So let's see if it takes effect. Run it. Okay, there it is. Green. Okay, so it didn't, the variable is changed, but not the, all right. So do w1.pack again. Red. All right, so it's not changing. All right, what about the following? W1 text, okay, and it would be label assigned to it, label text, which has new text, hopefully. All right, let's try this one. All right, there it is. You guys should be seeing this, hopefully. Let me make this a bit bigger. All right, so there it is. Purple. And there it is. All right, so now it works. You can see that the label changed, so I can try, river. And there it is, changed. $34.15. There it is. Nails. There it is. All right, so good. So that's basically how we can use forms. A very simple, quick intro to this topic. let's just, kind of, this should give you a lot of functionality, I think. We've covered buttons, labels. We've covered how to destroy the menu. We covered how to record data and then display it both on the terminal, but also on the menu itself. So now let's just wrap up these slides. And I'll leave the rest for you to figure out. I think you should have a good intuition now of how these work. So the next thing that you can look at would be radio buttons, which are the little things like this where you can select one. Check buttons, check boxes are always good. All right, so you can take a look at those. So radio buttons, small circles that appear filled when it is selected and appears empty when it is deselected. Useful when you want the user to select one choice from several possible options, okay? So, you might pick the things that you want to process. The radio button widgets created using tkinter modules, radio button class. Radio button widgets are mutually exclusive. Only one radio button in a container may be selected at any given time. Okay. So in var, it can be used with radio buttons. Assigns unique integer to each radio button. When a radio button widget is selected, its unique integer is stored in the int_var object. Okay. Talked about callback functions already, so that and checkboxes basically. This is just going into more details about it, and that's it. All right, so that's a good intro, I think. Good, short, and quick and dirty, as they say. Little introduction into the tkinter library. All right, the tkinter library. All right, so what we're going to do now, so I've covered this topic. That basically concludes the content for today. I'm going to, at this point, pause the recording.